Alright, hi everyone, I'm Alyssa COF, and today I'm going to be talking about comprehensive sexual education and how it's the only effective sex ed program provided today because it reduces teen pregnancies, prevents STDs, and normalizes sex. So to inform you on what a comprehensive sexual education program is, the Advocates for Youth state that it is a program that teaches about abstinence as the best method for avoiding STDs and unintended pregnancies, but also teaches about contraceptives that can reduce these risks. It also teaches interpersonal and communication skills and helps young people explore their own values, goals, and options. So not only do these programs benefit students by informing them, but they also focus on the well-being of the students. So, to show that the comprehensive sex ed programs are the only effective program, I will address my first point on how these programs have reduced teen pregnancies compared to other programs. Alice Langford, who works for the National Center for Health Research, believes that abstinence-only programs are not beneficial because they only have a short-term impact. She did research on an abstinence-only program called Choosing the Best, where she found that students in 9th and 10th grade who had no prior sexual experience entering the program were 1.5 times more likely to remain committed to abstinence by the end of 9th grade. However, by the time they started 10th grade, the students were no longer committed to abstinence. And the students who were sexually active prior to the program, it had no effect on whether or not they were abstinent or not. So, this research showcases that abstinence-only programs do not work and that most teenagers cannot commit to abstinence. Similar to abstinence-only programs, schools with a lack of comprehensive sex ed do not reduce teen pregnancies, but in fact, make their students more prone to unintended pregnancies. According to Tonic Vice, Lecia Adams claims that in states like Alaska, it is not required by law to teach sex ed in classes. And that in Alabama, if classes are given, they must stress abstinence. So just to put this into statistics, in Alabama, 2016, 28.4% of all pregnancies were teen pregnancies. And in Alaska, the teen birth rate is 25.8% according to Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. So comparing this with schools that do provide comprehensive sexual education, like California, which has a 17% rate of teen pregnancies, which is an outstanding 11% lower than in Alabama and 8% lower than Alaska. So this goes to show that schools that permit comprehensive sex ed do reduce unwanted pregnancies within teen. Another thing that these programs prevent are STDs, which is my second point. These programs prevent sexually transmitted diseases because they educate students on what they are and how to avoid them. However, states with high STD rates have high rates because of a lack of comprehensive sexual education. Dominic Rowley from Let's Get Checked says when it comes to the connection between education in schools and subsequent STD rates, I think it is highly accurate to say that the incidence rates of STDs is partly related to sex ed in schools and sexual health awareness in general. Meanwhile, states with low STD rates are low due to comprehensive sex education taught in schools. Rowley also says that Alaska has seen recent outbreaks of chlamydia in high schools, whereas states like New Hampshire, with comprehensive sex education within their schools, report the lowest rate of sexually transmitted diseases. And according to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, New Hampshire also has one of the lowest teen birth rates, which is 9.3%. So these programs are an advantage that most states like Alaska and Alabama do not have. Once again, furthering the point that comprehensive sex ed is the only effective sex ed program. Not only will these programs benefit their physical health and their future, but they can normalize sex in teen and young adult life, which is my third point. It can normalize sex by making it less taboo. If we talk about sex more openly, it can make it a less awkward topic, and would allow teens and young adults to ask any questions they had without ever feeling embarrassed. Anna Little Santa, from the Voice of San Diego, says that ignoring the need for sexual education perpetuates taboos about sex, myths about contraception, and can ultimately lead to ill-informed decisions. So these programs can normalize sex, debunk myths, which can ultimately prevent future issues like pregnancy or STDs. According to Amy Shalit, the author of Must We Fear Sexuality, in Dutch culture, parents and their teenagers are more open with sex, And the Dutch believe that being sexually active means being able to best recognize him or herself. And they view taking sensible preventative measures as part of being ready. According to Dutch News, the Netherlands has the lowest rate of teenage motherhood in the entire EU. So this means that being open-minded and honest with our sexuality can normalize sex enough to where it's comfortable to talk about with our parents, friends, and even teachers. Discussing sexual education in class can answer many questions for students and allow them to feel like they have someone to talk to. So, like I mentioned before, comprehensive sex ed is the only effective sex education program offered today, and this can be supported by the reduction of teen pregnancies, the prevention of STDs, and the normalization of sex itself. Thank you for listening.
All right, well, everybody's doing pretty good on the structural stuff, so there's not really a lot to talk about here. I think there might be a little bit more maybe on the controversy on the issue. You basically are relying on the two examples of Alaska and Alabama as the standard for comparison on a lot of your examples. And if those are the only two places that we have that problem, I'm not sure it's quite as extensive or comprehensive. I shouldn't say use the term comprehensive because that's in your term, as widespread as a problem as it might be. I think you need to have maybe a little bit more context here, a little bit more information about the lack of requirements for sex education, or the number of states that only allow abstinence only, or the states that refuse to use comprehensive education, so that we know why this is something that we need to worry about. Like I said, the structural stuff is all pretty good. I think you explained most of your concepts pretty well. There's information that is cited on the individual points that's also pretty reasonable. The rates, the statistical rates that you cite on that first point are, they seem like they are significant. When you mention the 7% difference and a 10% difference between the various states, seems reasonable, except of course that I don't know what kinds of factors that research controls for. If you were digging into this and you're the response speaker, you might want to look at some of the different conditions. There might be other explanations as to why the rates of pregnancy and STDs are different in those states that have little to do with comprehensive sex education. For example, just what's the age of consent in some of those states? There may be a difference related to that. The statistical correlations, the starting point on those things, you got to be careful though about assuming that a statistical correlation is causation. And I think we got a lot of speeches where people are doing that. And that doesn't mean that there isn't a relationship, but it doesn't prove a relationship by itself. The more information that you have that points in that direction, the greater confidence you have. I did think that the quote that you finished off that section with did a little bit more to try and explain that. The normalization issue, it relies primarily on the Dutch example that you're giving us, and it's okay. The idea that comprehensive sex education is what the Dutch do needs to be documented a little bit more, but I assume that that's probably what the basis of that argument is. The STD thing seems like it largely correlates the same kinds of issues with the pregnancy rate. It's statistical comparisons that we're looking at there. Low-key presentation, which is okay. That all makes it seem like you feel confident and you're credible in what you're talking about, as opposed to you're just nervous and frightened, which I didn't get that impression. All right, thank you.